Hey, did you just buy that fancy new 4K TV? Get those fancy new 4K game consoles getting ready to watch this video in fancy new 4K? Well, guess what, bucko, you're late to the party. 4K is old hat, man. The future is 8K. At least, maybe it could be one day. 8K sounds like a joke, a play on the expectation that technology advances quickly without rhyme or reason. Progress for the sake of progress in spite of your poor consumerist heart. 4K is barely mainstream right now. There's not a lot of content filmed to take advantage of it. Most games can't run in 4K even on your new PS5, and if they do, it usually comes with the caveats in the form of performance. Even streaming a movie or show in 4K will generally mean upscaled 4K, but still, it seems the market has embraced it as the norm. If you're going out to buy a new TV right now, today, odds are it's a 4K display. Now this whole 8K thing, again, weird, right? But if you were to go back a few years, 4K would be talked about in much the same way. The entire notion of 4K TVs was dismissed as some unnecessary manifestation of man's hubris. There was no content available. Full HD had barely caught on in the games market. For those that had just bought a new flat screen, the idea that it was already outdated was just laughable. And this got me thinking, if 8K seems so outlandish right now, but 4K seemed outlandish years ago, maybe we just don't see what things could be, right? The first 8K TVs were shown off in 2012, and since then it's been kind of a hyper-future tech. Like, why would you need one? Even now, there are 8K TVs on the market, and they cost quite a pretty penny. And if you want an OLED 8K, which you probably do, that's gonna be an oof. But you know what? 4K TVs also cost quite a bit when they first launched. So let's say 8Ks were cheap enough. What use do they have? I mean, can it really get better than 4K? And could you actually tell the difference? Resolution isn't always the most helpful stat by itself, and I've talked about this in detail in one of my more recent Whimzu videos. A lot of it is determined based on how far away you are from the screen or how much of the image is in your field of view. Some people sit really close and some people, they're really far away. All of this is based on how close you sit to the TV and how big your screen is. Back when 4K was dismissed almost universally as pointless, the average size of the American TV was not as big as it is today. While finding average TV size in all the homes in America isn't particularly easy, and many sources offer different numbers, it seems like 47 inches or less was the standard just 6 years ago. Now, if you have a 47-inch 4K TV, you would need to be sitting no more than 5 feet away for you to be able to tell the difference between 4K and 1080p resolutions. 5 feet's pretty close. I think it's safe to say that most people don't often sit closer than 7 feet away from a set. Over time, prices have fallen a lot for TV. The kind of price drops that we don't normally see with a lot of other consumer electronics. And nowadays, it seems that 65 inches is the new norm. On a 65-inch, well, 4K makes a lot more sense, even if you're sitting at 7 feet away from a TV. And it's not unreasonable to assume that prices will continue to drop. But then, what size of screen do you need to justify 8K? Okay, if you were to sit 7 feet away from the TV, probably the normal distance you'd sit, you would need a 130 to 140 inch 8K TV to justify it. Streaming content will be a pain without incredible internet. The size of a film will be like 100 gigabytes or more, and it's unlikely any physical format will support full 8K. especially since Blu-rays are somewhat dying out. Filming in 8K right now is a rarity, but it can happen. As for games, well, that's it's more complicated stuff. Rendering in native 4K is already pretty tough, but we did have 4K upscaling back with the PS4 Pro, the Xbox, other Xbox. Even on the Series X, 6K rendering isn't out of the question in rare cases, and it wouldn't be too unsurprising if upscaling technology allows for 8K games during some mid-gen refresh cycle. On PC, you can get some games to 8K right now with 3090 and DLSS. I know it's weird to even imagine something post 4K, but 10 years, that's a lot of time, and 10 years ago 4K was in the exact same position. 1080p was just taking over, and 4K seemed like a weird joke. But honestly, given the trend of TV sizes increasing, prices falling, and our insatiable desire for the best TVs, it seems entirely possible. But if all this happens, if 8K is adopted as the mainstream, are we just gonna have another conversation about 16K and then 32K? Well, that's a tough one. Once we get past 8K, the size of TVs will become much more of a problem. 100 inches is already going to be pretty hard to justify for most people's, living space. But if you want a 16K TV, you're going to need like 200, 300 inch, just behemoths. Things that might not even fit in your doorway. Going into all this, I sort of expected 8K to be entirely pointless, and I would talk about how pointless it was and why it will never catch on. But seeing all this same reaction to 4K just 10 years ago, well, it made me realize there probably will be a reason to have an 8K TV in the future. If the average size of the television screen just keeps increasing, well, maybe 100 inches isn't that unreasonable in a long time. And I don't know, that's just kind of cool to me. So watch my other channel if you want. I make a lot of videos. On this channel too. Go watch it.